I'm Holocaust survivor Sam Harris. Stay tuned for Rabbi Doug.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other that we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. It is my great pleasure to be here in Killdeer, Illinois with Holocaust survivor, President Emeritus of the Illinois Holocaust Museum, and my good friend Sam Harris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's so nice to have you on the show. I wanted to have Sam on the show. I've known him for many years. He was the president of the original museum, which was on Main Street in Skokie, and he is really one of the forerunners and movers and shakers that put together the funding and the building of the Illinois Holocaust Museum now, which is in Skokie, Illinois, between Gulf Road and Old Orchard Road. And he is now President Emeritus. He was the first president of the new museum when it was built. I was there, and we had on our show, I think, 3 episodes of the dedication of the museum with people like former President Clinton, and Rabbi Shalman was the rabbi who gave the invocation of blessed memory, and so many others who were there. And Elie Wiesel was with us at that show, and Sam Harris spoke on that show as well. And I've always wanted to interview him in person. He is also the author of the book, Sammy, Child Survivor of the Holocaust, and which tells a little bit about his story. And Sam, I just want to welcome you to the show. It's such a pleasure. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, your life pre-Holocaust, pre-World War II. Where did you live? How old were you? And what was family life like at that time when you were young?
Sure. I was 4 years old in September of 39 when Hitler came to my town. Before then, I had a happy life. I was the youngest of 7 children. I was an Orthodox Jew. My father was a soifer, you know.
A scribe.
Scribe, yes. You know, I go to the mikveh with them. I learned Hebrew. I still remember the first time I learned how to read Hebrew. I don't think they do that now, but you correct me if they do. A rabbi was standing behind me, and my father was teaching me with the rabbi, Kometz Aleph, Kometz Beis, and the rabbi was dropping candy over my head. I learned later on that it was to signify in Judaism that learning is sweet.
That is absolutely true. And there are those that still do that. There are also those who put a little honey on the sefer, on the book, and have you lick it off, sort of as a way of saying that the learning I'm about to do is sweet. So that's an old tradition which isn't done much anymore, but a beautiful thing. And certain schools do teach that way still, the same way that you learned. Absolutely. And so you were a young boy, and how many siblings did you have?
I was the youngest of 7.
Youngest of 7.
2 sisters and I survived. Only one sister is living now, not far from here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell me about the beginning of the war, where you were living, what town were you in, and what were the things that happened after that you talk about?
Sure. I lived in a town called Demblin in Poland, near Warsaw. It's about 40 miles from Warsaw. It was a shtetl. You know, we didn't have water. We had to go to a brunnen. It's a place where you pull up water. We had no electricity and all of that. And life for me was beautiful. My grandparents lived a few miles from me. We went to horse and buggy to my grandparents who had a farm. My bubba my grandma was making challah. My grandfather had some horses for me. You know, it was very, very, very nice. So that's what life was all about until September of 39, where I remember either having lunch or something, and I heard noises in the sky. It was the airplanes coming over, the Luftwaffe. They came for my town because the Polish Air Force getting their training right in my town at the airfield, so they wanted to knock it all out. And I remember looking at the sky, they were shooting each other and so on. Now, those same airplanes from the Russians, the Germans, because the Russian war's going on now,
Yeah,
it reminds me a lot of it. They came down and started shooting at people. That was my first introduction. I saw death for the first time. Then later on they made a ghetto and they beat the Jews. I remember they took my father out in the woods, they beat him. My brother brought him back almost half dead from the woods. They beat the Jews up, and they would line the Jews up, they'd take them in the woods. At the end of the day they didn't all come back. It was terrible. I don't have to give anybody any lessons here about the Holocaust, but this is, as a child, I was permanently scarred, and it's something that I cannot forget, that's been with me forever.
Wow, wow, wow. So what progressed after that now?
Yeah, well, progressed, they lined up all the Jews, and they...
Your whole town?
Oh yeah, several times. They had 3 Auszüglings, they called them, and I was with my whole family, and they took everybody and they put us into the central place, a big area, and I was in a line with my parents, and my father must have been smart. He pushed me out of the line and told me to run and hide. And at that point I must have been about, instead of 4, I must have been about 5 or 6. So I ran behind some bricks. My sister Sarah was already hiding, and we were crouching down, and we could see the people going in the directions toward the train. And of course, in there were my parents, my brothers, my sisters, my neighbors, my cousins, the whole place. The whole place, they ended up going to Treblinka, where they were killed.
Killed in the death camp.
In the death camp, yes.
Wow, wow, wow. So you never saw them again after that?
And never saw them. In my mind, they're still marching in the direction, in the direction toward the cattle cars. Yes.
So you ran, you were hiding. Did you
Yes.
see your sister who was hiding also? Did you run into each other?
My sister, who was 2 years older, that was quite a bit in those days. 2 years older. If I was 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8. Yeah, and we were crouching and we were looking to see what was happening, and then they were all gone. And my sister Rosa, who was 14 years older, she had a job at the airfields. Let's see, the Nazis needed slaves to work on the airfields. They used the airfields to fly to Russia, I learned later. And my sister was working there, so that's how we were saved. But the Nazis came again the second time. There's a few Jews left. And I was outside, and my sister said, "Come on, run after me." And we ran, and we ran, and we ran on fields. And finally we saw an outhouse in a farmer's place. We were hiding in there. The farmer came out, kicked us out. So we ran some more, and we saw another barn with a thing missing at the top. We climbed up there, and we buried ourselves into the straw. The Nazis were looking for us. "You there, arouse, Jews, come out." We were scared, we were covered.
Sure.
They didn't find us, and so.
So how long did that last for, this running and hiding, and what was the outcome after that? After the second?
Sure. My sister continued to work in the Demlin concentration camp on the airfields. She was able to sneak me into the camp with my sister Sarah. That was the only place to be, because if we weren't there, they would have caught us and killed us. But there, my sister was going to work with all the other people, and I was hiding under beds and everything for a long time.
And did she sneak food to you?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. What's the food? The food was soup with horse meat. You're lucky to get a piece of meat. Bread that was basically, a lot of it was straw. It was terrible. The whole idea was, as you know, to kill all the people there, make them weak, and then bring new ones in, take these out to Sobibor or to one of those camps. So then the Russians came close. I'll make this quick. The Russians came close, so they put us into cattle cars.
So everybody in the airfield who was working in the airfield in the camp there were thrown into cattle cars also.
Why? Because the Russians were coming, and so they needed people to work in Chenstochova, a concentration camp there. And there they were building bullets for the front, so they needed cheap labor, the Jews. And of course, I being a kid, they see me getting off. I don't want to tell you about the cattle cars, how terrible it was. No food, no toilets. It was like being in the belly of a monster, and it was bad. And when I got off the cattle cars, they pulled me to the right. My sister wouldn't let go of her knee, and so a Nazi came and he kicked me in the chest. They kept me there for several days. And there were some other kids that were there a few days earlier. They took him to the woods and they shot him. Why didn't I get shot? I was lucky. Tell me quickly, there was a Jew that saved a Nazi in World War II. They were both in the Austrian army, and the Nazi at that time was wounded, and the Jew saved him. So he wrote a letter to the SS guy, saved the 5 kids. One of his kids was his daughter. So the Nazi, Burtenschlager was his name, he said, "Deine bleibt." It's your stays, the others go. I was one of the others. And Benkart was the Jewish guy's name. He says, "Alle oder keine, save all 5 or none." Can you believe that?
Wow.
So, speaking of luck. Speaking of luck.
Wow, wow, wow. So,
After the war,
yeah, how did you get liberated? How did you get liberated?
I was hiding in Chenstochova concentration camp. Again, I'm still 8, 9 years old, skinny, no place I couldn't work. So my sister would share whatever she had. And the Russians came. They decided to come really fast. And the Germans couldn't even, we were lined up to be taken away. And the Russians came so fast, we were left behind. And so we were liberated January 17th, 1945.
Wow, you were through
just
this
before Auschwitz. And
unbelievable, unbelievable. And were you taken to a camp, to a refugee camp after this?
No.
What came after that?
My sister had married an Austrian Jew. She went to Austria to see if there were any survivors. We went back to Demblin to see if there were any survivors.
Oh, wow.
And of us. No. And the people in town didn't want us to come back. They wanted to get rid of us. Hey, how come you're still living? You know? Excuse me. So
Terrible.
Anyway, so my sister dropped me off in a orphanage with where the Jewish kids were around and they are still living. They put us in a little orphanage.
In what town was this?
It was in Lublin. And my sister went back to Vienna. She said she'd come back. She came back, picked me up. I went to Vienna, Austria. I went to school for a couple of years, learned to speak German. They brought me to the United States.
Wow.
And
you came with your sister to the United States?
With my sister Sarah. I had 2 sisters.
Oh, right.
The other one stayed in Vienna. And she thought it would be better for me here, to be adopted here. So I lived in the Jewish Children's Bureau.
Oh.
They found a place for me to be
adopted. The JCB orphanage, unbelievable story.
They put me in a foster home.
A foster home, right.
And they found my parents, Dr. and Mrs. Harris. My name was Zhezhnik, Shlamik Zhezhnik. then I was adopted in Northbrook, Illinois.
Oh, that's where you got Northbrook from.
Yeah, but the Jewish Children's Bureau, there you went. So I've been run all over the place, and then eventually I ended up here.
Wow, wow, wow. What would you say of in your book? What would you say was the moment that you thought you were not going to survive? Where, at what point of your hiding, of your running, did you say, "This is it, this is it"? And then, you know, all of a sudden, was it when the five children were saved? Was there another time? What was really the point where you really said, "I give up, it's over"?
You know, it's a very good question. I'm not so sure there ever was a moment like that. At the beginning of my book, somebody, a minister who read this book, said, "Sam, this is full of religion. You talk about angels." When my father kicked me up of the line, I was right in the middle. All I could see his legs. I was skinny, and I looked up, and there was clouds, and I said to myself, "I'll be all right. I'll be all right." It was as though a guardian angel was talking to me. So when I was taken to Częstochowa to be killed, in Yiddish, I sent a note to my sister Rosa. "Don't worry, if there's a river, I'll jump over it." I think, I don't know if there ever was a time.
You always had that will to survive.
I must have.
Wow.
I must have.
Wow.
Yeah, there was probably times, but I don't remember sitting thinking that I was going to. I was hungry. Probably, you know, I was in the ghetto. You're skinny. People are lying on the street of starvation. I was skinny. I had no doctors. I was. What am I doing here? You know, what luck? You know.
Sure. Well, God was with you all through that, obviously.
I must believe in that.
Yes, absolutely. You came to the United States. How did you end up in Chicago?
The highest must have sent me to Chicago. Oh, let me back up. I found out that I missed the ship that was supposed to go to Israel on the Exodus. I missed it.
You missed the Exodus. You mentioned that to me before. Yeah.
And so I ended up going on a ship, the Ernie Pyle, in a Jewish organization that was created. No, it wasn't Jewish. Mrs. Roosevelt, it was the Organization for Rehabilitation of European Children. That's what my visa said, or something like that. So I was sent here somehow, and then by train I went to Chicago through the JUF.
They brought you here.
And they took over and put me in a foster home.
And that's how that happened.
Yeah,
so let's go to adulthood.
Yes.
And because we have a few minutes left, I don't want to forget this. The original small museum in Skokie, Illinois on Main Street, which I was at, that was maybe the first time I met you. It was a beautiful little place. There were speakers there all the time. Schools came there all the time. You were involved in that.
Yes.
Were you involved also in the Washington, D.C. museum that was built for the Holocaust Memorial? Or did you go there to visit only?
I went to visit, and I think I gave a speech on their behalf or something like that. Not too much.
And did you also, I'm sure you did this, but I want our viewers to know, did you also get interviewed by Steven Spielberg as he interviewed so many survivors in the archives?
Completely.
Very nice.
Yes, a complete thorough interview.
Very nice.
Emotional.
Oh, I'm sure it was. So tell us about the beginnings of that small museum on Main Street, where I brought my students to when I was teaching, and how things progressed to say we need to build a real museum, a museum with exhibits and with memoirs in Skokie, which is the museum that now exists, the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center.
I went to visit New York and saw the museum there, and I was on top of the building, the tall building, with a friend of mine, an Auschwitz survivor, Ernie Michel. He was in charge of fundraising there in New York. We became very good friends, and I saw the museum there. I flew back, and I said, Chicago needs one. I'm going to get off the airplane and go straight to the mayor's office.
And who was the mayor at that time? Smith?
Daley. No, but I
didn't. Oh, you went to Chicago's mayor?
I was going to go there because he handled my citizenship.
The original Richard
Ernie, and so I'd had Ernie Michel say, Sam, do you belong to a Jewish organization I just joined? the organization. I was very involved already in there. And I said, I want to build a museum. They thought I was crazy. So I became the chairman, organizer, eventually president of this, and that's how I got involved. I felt Chicago had to have a museum like that. And put the people together. Eventually I got J.B. Pritzker involved. He had to be involved. He couldn't take no for an answer from me. And you know, I have to tell you something. When I got up and I volunteered and say, we will have a museum, a blood rushed through my head like, wow, I didn't say that. You know, it was an outside experience. And the way, then I spent the next 20 years, day and night, working.
Wow.
It was worth it.
Wow. The original museum, how did you contact or you know, how did the speakers and the survivors that were there at that time speaking on Main Street on a regular basis at the museum? You had so many different survivors that got up and spoke there to children and to visitors in that little museum. How did you gather them together and get them to be involved at the beginning? What was the process of contacting them and letting them know, we started this little museum here on Main Street in Skokie, we want you to come and be involved and speak and tell your story? How did that come about?
Well, the survivors, you know, got involved there after the march in Skokie.
So the Nazi march.
The Nazi march. So you had a whole bunch of survivors wanting to put this little museum. It was, you know, you couldn't even call it a museum. It had pictures of them and things like. It was enough for people to say, hey, though, it wasn't a museum like you and I know.
Right.
And I could see that.
It was a small educational center. That's what it was.
I think that's what it was. So I volunteered when I saw what was going on there. I had one of those outside experiences, and it was the best thing I ever accomplished, because I had also learned, you know, all these books that are written, the Holocaust never happened, and here I am a volunteer, not even a volunteer. I'm a survivor. How could that be? So I had to do that.
You know, when the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Educational Center opened up on Woods Drive,
yes.
I was there, as I mentioned, and did my show. You know, how did I know I was going to end up sitting right behind Elie Wiesel? And at the beginning of my show, you have me, Elie Wiesel, and I speaking to each other in the beginning of my show, and meeting people like Colin Powell and President Clinton and so on. It was quite an event. How does one put it together, an event like that, for such an institution which is going to be a landmark for the state of Illinois and for the Chicago area? How did that all get put together?
What's that question? You know, everyone I told that to said I want to be part of it. No one said no. I don't know if I was persuasive but everybody thought it was time. You know, there was a guy in Iran called Ahmadinejad.
Yes.
He was going around saying, oh, the Holocaust didn't happen. The timing was right. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with an answer for you. But we had a lot of people. Nobody said no. And I got the right people involved. So I didn't do it alone. We got everybody involved.
Sure.
I got the Mayor Van Dusen of Skokie. I got, we were looking for land, and it was not easy to get the land. We found land, and then they turned us down. It was a very big challenge. And now that it's here, it was the best thing for the community.
Sure, and I've been so honored every year for the past number of years to be part of the She'erit HaPleita, the survivors of Children of Holocaust Survivors organization,
yes.
And She'erit HaPleita with the survivors, and being part of the yearly Yom HaShoah, a Holocaust Memorial Day program, which now for the last 2 years has transferred over to be part of the Holocaust Museum's
yes.
Yom HaShoah program. And I've been so honored to be on the dais and be part of that for so many years. It's nice to see so many community leaders and rabbis and governors of the state of Illinois,
yes.
who some I met for the first time at that service,
yes.
That I hadn't met before. Others, such as Pat Quinn I met for the first time at the
Opening,
Holocaust Museum opening. So
I remember he gave a speech. He was on before me.
Yeah.
I said, "Look at you! I got to follow you."
but I just the whole attitude that never forget, always remember, and it just seems to be something that people like you who are still with us, thank God, have never given up on making sure that the word never, ever, ever is forgotten, and that it's passed down l'dor vador from generation to generation, that, you know, now 2 or 3 generations after you, people are passionate about not only honoring the survivors of the Holocaust, such as you, but also on making sure that the descendants of the survivors of the Holocaust carry on the legacy from generation to generation. It's such an important thing, and it's really because of people like you who persevered through torture, through terrible, terrible things that we can't even imagine. Those of us who've never lived through them are around to tell us about it and make us know what really happened.
Taped with Rabbi Doug. We'll be right back.
Being a sole survivor is a responsibility to tell you what it means to lose everyone.
The Holocaust is a harsh reminder of the consequences of unchecked hatred and the fragility of societies. Its lessons have never been more relevant. Today, as we witness an alarming rise in anti-Semitism, racism, and neo-Nazism, we must recommit ourselves to learning those lessons and acting on them. That commitment to shaping the future is precisely what we owe the victims of the past.
I can't thank you enough for being on the show. This is the book, Sammy, Child Survivor of the Holocaust, by Samuel R. Harris. You are an amazing person and a good friend.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And I wish you, this was just your 87th?
87.
87th birthday this week. I called him on his birthday to wish him a happy birthday and said, I got to get you on the show this week. We've waited so long. Thank you so much for being my guest. Thank all of you for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see former shows on the web. If you want to email Sam Harris or me, I will certainly forward that email to him, and I know he'll get back to you personally. The email address is info@tvrabbi.com. Sam Harris, the author of Sammy, Child Survivor of the Holocaust, and also a tremendous, tremendous mensch. We're so happy to have you on the show. Hope to see you all next time right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone, and hope to see you again very soon. Shalom,
Thank you.
shalom.
Get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.